Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, here on News Talk 840 KXNT, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. I, Sam Mirejovsky, am your host, otherwise known as Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. On X, on Twitter, you can find me at What's Right Sam. And of course, my email, sam@whatsrightshow.com. Now, Trump has come out with a massive Truth Social post. This is the equivalent of a tweet on X. And in it, he is absolutely savaging anyone and everyone, including his so-called former fans and followers and acolytes, supporters, for continuing on about this Jeff Epstein deal. Now, I'm reminded of something that I want to that may be relevant, and it was all the way, I think, back in 2017. Maybe it was even before this. But Rush Limbaugh, El Rushbo, the great one himself, expressed a sentiment that Trump had a connection with his voters that most politicians simply don't have. Rush said that Trump's voters have a connection with him that only he, Trump, can break. He said this repeatedly, I know, and I remember at the time I was listening to it, and it sunk in, because I think it's absolutely true that Trump over the years has commanded a power over his base that has been really remarkable. Now, this post where Trump, let me just pull this up. It is wild. The radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again, writes Trump. Just like with the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier, the lying 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, et cetera, he goes through labeling all these scams that are now well documented. He goes, these Democrats, they're good at it. It's all they have. They are no good at governing, no good at policy, and no good at picking winning candidates. And he's 1,000% right about all this. Trump adds, also, unlike Republicans, they stick together like glue. That's also true. Democrats are lemmings. They'll follow Joe Biden, Kamala Harris off a cliff. They are good at that because Democrats don't think for themselves. We Republicans do, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Trump writes, the Democrats' new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past, emphasis in caps on past, supporters have bought into this, he uses the word, I will say BS, hook, line, and sinker. They, referring to, I guess he means his past supporters, haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. So, listen, there's a part about weaklings. He doesn't want anybody's support anymore who continues to harp about this. Now, I am more convinced than ever that my hypothesis yesterday is 100% correct. I am convinced that the Democrats in the last 4 years under Biden created yet another insurance policy. Remember, those are the words that were used by a number of FBI agents, particularly Peter Strzok, texting his side chick, Lisa Page, as they were discussing, getting Trump, the insurance policy. And this latest Democrat insurance policy consisted of something along these lines: a dossier, a report, an investigation piece, complete nonsense inside the Epstein files that implicates Trump. And it is nonsense. It's bullcrap. The evidence against the real perpetrators has been lost or destroyed. It's gone. And in its place is this made up report. And the Democrats all know it. And they have, in unison, decided to, now's the time. And by the way, Trump and Pam Bondi walked into this by first doing a big to-do about releasing stuff and then discovering that really the only thing of any interest in there is probably an entirely made-up deal by the Democrats, by, Merrick Garland, whoever else was in on this, Comey et al., a poison pill report that now Trump, by not releasing it, is looking guiltier day by day. That Trump is furious and lashing out, I'm not surprised. I'd be pissed. Can you imagine? This is the worst kind of accusation or innuendo anybody can ever level against a man, being somehow implicated in a child sex trafficking operation. It's disgusting. And yet that the Democrats would consider doing something like this doesn't surprise me one iota. So this is where we're at. This is what I think is the story. Can I tell you that? Confirm it? Beyond all doubt? No, but it's the only explanation I have for the way he's writing this. Again, go to Trump's words. He literally calls this thing the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier. Here we go again, he says. Just like with that, just like with the laptop from hell that 51 intelligence agents swore was Russian disinformation, just like the Russia scam, just like all of their scams and hoaxes, this is another one. Trump is saying it in the tweet. And it would make sense. This is how the Democrats operate. And it would also explain why you have all these prominent Democrats out there saying, release it, release it, release it. And then you've got the idiot Thomas Massie signing on with Democrats first. Yeah, release it, make it all public. The level of idiocy by Republicans is astonishing to me. When I talk about, and I have over the past week, talk about what I want to see happen with Epstein, is if there is evidence that implicates someone, and again, I'm not saying that he is implicated, I'm saying if there is evidence that implicates Reid Hoffman, if there is evidence that implicates Bill Gates, any of these people that clearly, there are rumors, there are flight logs suggest that they traveled to this janky island. Have you seen pictures of this island, by the way, Robbie? Let me digress here for a minute. Have you seen pictures? Not now, since it's been a few years and nobody's taking care of it, but back in the day, the day that it was raided, when the power boats showed up and the agents from the FBI went on Little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Guys showed up there, and I've looked at a lot of the photos. This place was not nice. Why in God's name were these extremely wealthy men, billionaires, right, who can afford to stay at any 5-star, 6-star super luxury resort, can rent, buy the most opulent of vacation spots, going to this dumpy little island where there is one house with 4 or 5 bedrooms? Why are they going there? For what purpose? The story is not about Trump. The story is, why didn't these people get prosecuted at any stage along the way? Why is it that, for example, the Democrats in the last 5 years were more obsessed with getting Trump for January 6th and disqualifying him as a political candidate than spend any amount of time, serious time, looking at crimes against kids? That's the story. And the hoax, of course, is that there are no Epstein files. There is evidence, whether it is good evidence or not, I don't know, but there is evidence, as Dershowitz has repeatedly pointed out, that is under seal at various courts. I think he references a judge in Manhattan, for example, that these judges are themselves likely incentivized to keep the names of rich and powerful Democrats on the low key. And that's what we have here. Is it an important issue? A lot of you are writing me and emailing me, Sam, this is not the rape of children is to me an important issue. The release of the Epstein files, I'm convinced it's all a political scam. So that's where we're at on this. I'll take you through some of Trump's comments on this. And of course, the polling, Rasmussen Reports has some opinions about this. Be right back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm going to expand on my theory of what happened behind closed doors in the executive branch at the Department of Justice when Trump came to power as it relates to the so-called Epstein files. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Let me set a stage here for a moment. How I imagine all this went down. The new administration comes into office. This is a priority item. Pam Bondi, who has a little bit of a thirst for attention of cameras, media, and the adoration of conservative influencers, goes, yeah, we're gonna get these files. I'm reviewing the files. They are on my desk. And lo and behold, in the files, they find a report written by some Democrat stooge, deep state, either prosecutor, lawyer, intelligence official, FBI agent, who knows? And it is a nonsense report. It implicates Trump. It glosses over powerful Democrats. Everybody in the room knows it's nonsense. Chief among them, Trump himself. Now, right there was the critical linchpin moment. What do we do, right? There are different options. One is turns out there's nothing here, or it's all under seal, or as I mentioned before you start mentioning that you have stuff on your desk, you go, actually, I don't. It's all with these courts. It's locked up by some corrupt judge in Manhattan. Whatever. You punt. Or you release it all. You go, here it is. I'm releasing it. It's the good, bad, and the ugly. And by the way, this report's total nonsense, but we promised transparency in this administration. Or you, like Pam Bondi's been doing, fits and starts trying to come up with and conjure nonsense for, why this suddenly is there's nothing to see here. These are not the droids you're looking for. The Jedi mind trick that she pulled last week only made things worse. The cover-up is always bad. And what are we covering up? We are covering up yet another deliberate sabotage of Trump, an attempted sabotage of his first term. It's gross, and it ought to infuriate all of us. I can see why Trump is upset, but attacking his supporters is not, in my view, the right approach. I'm heartbroken over this, folks. I'll be absolutely honest with you. It is I'm not having a good day. Here was Trump Tuesday evening talking about the Epstein story being boring. This was at Joint Base Andrews. This is the night before his blistering tweet that has now made the rounds. So this is what he said about this just the night before.
Why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled?
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say let them have it.
Let them have anything that's credible. I'm telling you, folks, he's plain as day. Nobody else is saying this. Nobody's talking about this. I feel like I'm the only person in conservative media right now who also happens to be a huge fan of the president's saying, obviously, they've put in some kind of BS report that Trump is implicated. It also explains why, when Elon Musk was high as a kite on ketamine and having a meltdown over the big, beautiful bill, decided to go, oh, I've got news for you. There's Trump's in the files. That's why they're not releasing them. And it turns out, and I said this at the time, that it's likely that Elon Musk wasn't lying. Of course, Trump is in the file. I mean, if there is a book written about Epstein, then Trump, who happens to live in New York, 8 blocks away from the guy, lives in Palm Beach, however many, a mile and a half, 2 miles away from the guy, who ran in the same social circles, who had a falling out. Of course, he's going to be in the story. And the huge part of the story has always been, and to reiterate this for those of you new to this saga, that Trump's falling out with Epstein consisted of and happened as a result of Epstein trying to lure an employee of Trump's club Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, try to lure an underage girl that worked at the club to his home. And Trump found out about it and lost his ever-loving mind, as any normal human being would, and broke all ties with Epstein. This is well-documented stuff, people. So this is the Russia collusion hoax merged together with the Steele dossier, all put together. It's just one bit. And to this extent, Trump is absolutely right. The problem is it's damaging for him. And you can't go at it by just lashing out at people. Here's Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports suggesting, and I gotta give this time. I've got a break here coming up. I'm gonna play this clip when we come back, Robbie, because Mitchell sits down with Steve Bannon. This is today, and he sits down with Steve Bannon, and he's talking about the approval rating. And I was going through the polls yesterday, and Trump's approval rating his daily tracking approval rating with Rasmussen has taken a huge hit, just as Pam Bondi sent out that stupid memo saying there's nothing to see here. It is a problem. You can't just sweep this under the rug. What would I do? I imagine behind the scenes, they are trying to find out who wrote the report, where the information was sourced, and build a case and an explanation for why it's nonsense before they release it. That's what I would do, right? I'd go to the team and I'd say, find me who created this report so we can get ahead of the leak that is inevitable. It's a matter of time. But remember, the Democrats never leaked this before because it simply wouldn't have been credible if they had done it before. They left it behind. They left it in the desk. They left it there as a poison pill and now can scream and shout, ha, Trump's not releasing it, ha. And every day that goes by is worse and worse for our favorite president. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Now, this sit down here, this was today. We had Mark Mitchell, who is the head pollster for Rasmussen Reports. This guy is a fan of Trump's. He is a Republican pollster. He is absolutely losing his mind with Trump. He's on Steve Bannon's show, and he's suggesting, which is something I told you all yesterday, that Trump's approval rating is in the danger territory because of his handling of this Epstein mess.
Well, just talking about his job approval rating, he hit net +8 June 15th, which was also, I will admit, the first day that Israel attacked Iran. I think it was June 13th. And it's been downhill since then. So he's lost 12 points now. He's underwater 4 points. People who've been following us know that we've been putting out a chart pretty much daily that overlays all the presidential net approvals going back to Obama 1. And where I was going into July 4th was I said, well, Trump's probably a day or two away from crossing over Obama's numbers. And where are we now? Donald Trump is crossing under Joe Biden's numbers. And so that's a pretty big reversal in less than a week. And the biggest news, I mean, that I can attribute to this, it's like maybe people have heartburn that the one big beautiful bill was, the messaging was a bit of a mess. It doesn't cut enough. Maybe it's the news that Republican establishment is playing footsie with amnesty because of all the people who love slave labor. But the big one is Epstein, and people keep downplaying it. But this is not about a guy who died in 2019. This is about a representation of two-tier justice and about unaccountable government. And I don't think, listen, back in March, or it was the end of February, voters were let down on the Epstein thing too. But that's because they thought Trump was, okay, he'll just bring it later. It's been a campaign promise, and I know that he didn't specifically quote it very many times, but this has been basically a proxy for government accountability and redress for the deep state. And so what happened, in my opinion, in the last few days is there was a major rug pull, and it's affecting his polling.
Yeah, this is right. And I mentioned this yesterday, that it isn't just about kids being violated. It's not just about child trafficking. It's about the fact that powerful people in this country who are politically connected got away with it. And we aren't okay with that, right? Fundamentally. The only people that are okay with it, and I hate to be the guy to say this, are the Democrats. Who created this? It was Epstein who had high-level contacts with powerful people in the Democratic Party. And to me, it seems obvious he was some sort of an asset. He had some connections to the deep state. And this, by the way, is a shared concern, right? And there's an overlap. The same deep state that propped up Epstein is also the same deep state that now wants to take out, and has wanted to take out since 2015, Donald Trump. The minute that Trump ceased being a 1% fringe candidate, going from 2015 to 2016 in the Republican primary, the minute that that happened, every person in the deep state turned against him. Now, what we have to give Trump, and I'm imploring those of you, because I have, based on the emails that I am receiving, sam@whatsrightshow.com, based on those emails, I get a very strong feeling that we are split on this issue. And I, for my part, want to bring us back together. I hear both of you. I understand those of you that support the president and his agenda and say we just got to move on from this. You're not wrong. The agenda that Trump is pushing forward is unbelievable, and he is being he's achieving so much success, and it cannot be stopped. And I believe that this fake report that nobody has mentioned yet, but is, I believe, out there, in the quote unquote Epstein files that implicates Trump and is absurd as, for example, the Steele dossier, where supposedly prostitutes were procured by Trump in a Russian hotel room, Moscow hotel room, to urinate on the bed that was once slept in by Barack Obama. Okay. That kind of stuff is in there, and it's designed to derail the agenda. So when I'm getting emails and I'm acknowledging this, and you tell me, move on, stick to the agenda is king. But the way that this was handled, there has to be a pivot here. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I think Trump's going to have to pivot. Trump is capable of it. The number one criticism that his opponents make when it comes to Trump is that he's this pig-headed buffoon. He's neither. Trump will get it. I think, right? And one thing that is, to me, obvious is that this whole thing was just handled so profoundly poorly by Pam Bondi that, I don't know how she survives this. Let me say something to you here. You think that this, because I don't see these poll numbers as some sort of irreversible death spiral at all. I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but imagine that in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, during the August recess of Congress, when Trump is able to easily make a recess appointment for any position, Trump comes in and says, okay. Pam Bondi hands in her resignation. New attorney general comes in. It's somebody we all love, right? That person goes, here's exactly what's going on. I've looked at this report. Here it is. I'm disclosing. Big old press conference, whole thing. All is forgiven, right? Just tell us. If the evidence isn't there, or it's being held by judges against the wrongdoers, okay, we got it. If there is some nonsense report that implicates Trump for doing this stuff, we understand what the deep state is capable of. Just talk to us like adults. That's my point here. And Pam Bondi just went deer in the headlights, while at the same time, what did Megyn Kelly call it? She had an affinity for being in the Klieg lights. It's such an inside line. You know what the Klieg lights are? If you're in a TV studio or you're up on a stage, like at the Republican convention, for example, they're the big lights that they have, the stage lights, studio lighting that just come on and boom, they turn on. So powerful that when they flip the switch, you can hear them come on, and they flood the stage or wherever you're sitting in the lights. And it's it's an insider sort of joke, when you talk about somebody being, being fond of the Klieg lights. They like to be in the spotlight. So that is true. And I just keep coming back to, and now I'm speaking to those of you who think this all should have disappeared a week ago or longer. You have to admit that inviting those influencers, social media types, and Oh, here's your little binder, Johnny. Oh, I'm just getting here with my binder. And they all took pictures of their little binders that they got. And within hours, right, there are little grumblings across social media that, oh, there's really nothing in here. And then there were people that didn't get invited and they scuttled against it. And I was still, I tend to view things. I give Trump the benefit of the doubt. But the longer this has gone on, I just can't carry water for this anymore. It's just there's no denying that it's been massively miscalculated. Now, how confident am I of my theory that there is this poison pill document or report in the Epstein file somewhere, at the DOJ that the Democrats left behind? Very much. How confident am I that this is all that Trump, that people would understand? Well, look, here's Cuomo today on News Nation. So, Cuomo's a lib. He's been punished by the lib, so he has become a little bit more mainstream. But here's his take about this. And when you listen to it, you understand that I think that if Trump came clean with everything, he wouldn't win over CNN and MSNBC, but he'd win over the middle, and he'd certainly win over any disenchanted MAGA supporters.
And now this administration is kind of looking like more of what you oppose, that they're covering for the powerful. Now, by the way, I don't believe that that's what this administration is doing. Certainly not to cover for Trump. Those pictures online of him with Epstein and the young girl and the hand, it's fake. I can't show you the picture, and I shouldn't show it to you because it's just going to keep the fakery going. He knew Epstein. He liked Epstein. He partied with Epstein. But he also knew that he was a creep, and he took some private action against him. And I've never seen proof that ties Trump to any of the ugly, disgusting, illegal, and lascivious behavior that Epstein loved. So I actually find Trump's position on Epstein to be pretty reasonable for him.
Yes. And what Chris doesn't know, or he hasn't gotten to yet, is that, well, and maybe I'm wrong. Listen, folks, I'm not clairvoyant. But I'm a lawyer, and we lawyers tend to try to see, behind what is just right in front of us. We look at stuff and go, okay, what's this? Okay, these are the things we know. Why? What do all of these things have in common? And if we synthesize this all, what's the likely there behind it all? And that's why I'm telling you, I think there's this fake report in there that implicates him. And everybody, what Chris Cuomo, a die-in-the-wool Democrat, just said here on News Nation is 100% true. It's everything I have always said about this. Sheesh. Somebody in the White House needs to call me. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Back after this. Hi, welcome back to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. Sam Mirejovsky here, your host. Good to be with you as always, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on News Talk 840 KXNT. At What's Right Sam on X is where you can find me. And then, of course, email me, sam@whatsrightshow.com. So, yeah, the Fed, Jerome Powell, continues to be under fire. Some reporting that his ouster, a.k.a. his termination, is imminent, waiting for Trump to call Powell over and say, "You're fired." Well, anyway, CNBC today reporting that inflation numbers are ridiculously low. Powell keeps saying the Fed keeps ducking any effort, any initiative really to lower rates. They say that they're worried about tariffs, the rate that inflation is going to go up. It's a matter of time. And here's CNBC today going, well, not really a lot here in terms of inflation.
June, PPI comes in unchanged. Unchanged, we're expecting up 0.2. Unchanged would be the smallest inflationary wholesale increase since it was minus 0.1 in March of this year. Strip out food and energy, it remains zero. Unchanged, zero. And that would, once again, that would comp towards April when we were minus 0.2, which, by the way, was lowest inflation rate going all the way back to April of 2020. If we strip out food, energy, and trade, unchanged. That also would comp towards April of this year. Now, let's take a bigger view, year over year. Year over year headline, expected 2.5, comes in 0.2 light. 2.3%. That would be the lightest in the Wayback Machine going to September of last year. If we strip out food and energy, up 2.6, a tenth light, and that is 0.4 less than the rear view mirror, which was up 3%. That 2.6, well, we have to go back to July of last year, 1 year, and that was 2.6. Find a lower number, you're in April of 24. And finally, the year over year, ex food, ex energy, ex trade, 2.5%, 0.2 lighter than 2.7, 2.5, Wayback Machine, you're equally where we were in November of 23. To find a lower number, you're in February of 21.
It is astounding how great inflation is. Trump said he'd get it under control, and he has. Meanwhile, the Fed continues to dither, and they're dithering for political reasons. Here is Powell, by the way, the head of the Federal Reserve, who's in some hot water over the office renovation of the Federal Reserve. Apparently, they have an office, right? They're building. And they were supposed to renovate it for something like, I don't know, still gobs of money, $800 million, and it's now running into $2 billion. And rising. It may actually end up, this cost overrun may end up giving Trump grounds to terminate him. Trump is desperate to get Powell to quit so he doesn't have to test the so-called independence of the Fed by terminating him and getting himself into hot water on the Hill. So, yeah, so anyway, but here is Powell. This was July 1st. What is that? 2 weeks ago and change? 2 weeks ago. Powell says inflation is, there's a risk. All the smart people are saying that there's a risk.
And what we're waiting for to reduce rates is to understand what will happen with really the tariff inflation. And there's a lot of uncertainty about that. Every forecaster you can name who is a professional, forecaster with adequate resources and forecasts for a living is forecasting a pretty significant. Everyone that I know is forecasting a meaningful increase in inflation in coming months from tariffs because someone has to pay for the tariffs, and it will be someone in that chain that I mentioned between the manufacturer, the exporter, the importer, the retailer. Ultimately somebody putting it into a good of some kind or just the consumer buying it, and all through that chain, people will be trying not to be the ones who pick up the cost. But ultimately, the cost of the tariff has to be paid. And some of it will fall on the end consumer. We know that because that's what businesses say. That's what the data say from past. So we know that's coming. And we just want to see a little bit of that before we make judgments prematurely.
Oh, before we make judgments prematurely. One of the things I reported on just the other day was the budget surplus coming into the Treasury from these tariffs. Now, this is money that presumably goes toward reducing the deficit. I have a basic economic question for Mr. Powell, who seems to think of himself as a relatively smart person on the subject of economics. What happens to inflation when deficit spending goes up? Well, we all know this. The higher the deficit, the larger the delta between what we spend and what we're actually bringing in, the higher inflation is, because it reduces the value of every dollar in circulation. Now, what happens, by the way, to inflation when we get surplus in that narrows, that shrinks the deficit? Economically speaking, we know that inflation will go down. So what he's not talking about here, he's not even addressing it. He thinks that the money that is taken in tariffs goes poof into the thin air, into the ether, that it's nowhere to be found. He just thinks it disappears. This is how Democrats do math. By the way, I get it, because every Democrat thinks the tax revenue is their money and should be cycled through USAID and given away to Ethiopians looking to study, birth defects in spider monkeys. Okay? But that's not how it works. Tax revenue that shrinks the deficit is a net benefit to inflation. It's not some disappearing act. Okay, so, and again, I love that consistently the Fed has refused to raise rates because they believe that inflation is going to get worse, and then every month inflation continues to get better. So whether you're looking at the core CPI or basically any of the indicators. Okay, gotta run. Top of the hour here. Be right back after this. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. So, obviously, big battle going on, Capitol Hill. This bill, I got to talk about this rescission package and what this consists of. This is a codification of the DOGE cuts, the first round of this. And it's intended to claw back billions in federal funds that Congress has already approved for foreign aid projects and for public broadcasting. It's got to pass the Senate, and then it's got to pass the House, and then it's, got to go through this, presidential budget law. It's called rescission, circumvent the filibuster. All right. Now, the first round of voting, the usual suspects came out of their little caves to oppose it. And when I'm saying the usual suspects, I mean the usual Republicans came out. The top porksters in the Senate. Susan Collins of Maine, Mitch McConnell, who probably doesn't even know where he is now, and of course, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. These are the three people that absolutely despise Trump and are Republicans in name only. So this required Vice President J.D. Vance to cut the cast a tie-breaking vote. And so, he's had to do this a few times precisely because of Collins and McConnell and Murkowski being obstinate. Now, what are these cuts about? This is great news, folks. About $8.3 billion in cuts to foreign aid programs. So this basically is, I think, almost $2 billion from the Economic Support Fund, $1.1 billion from global health programs, $400 million from the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief. They're fighting over that big time. You look at all this. This is the stuff I have dreamed of my entire political life, getting cut from the budget. $1.1 billion from public broadcasting. Sayonara National Public Radio. Okay. And PBS too. So this is a part of a House-passed bill, H.R. 4, that that left, I think, on the 12th, and now is being tossed around in the Senate. So the Senate either needs to get this done, and they've got, I think, a 45-day window to resolve this. The Dems are losing their minds over this. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who herself at one point had presidential ambitions, if you'll remember, and who is known for berating her staff if they don't bring her dry cleaning fast enough, had this to say about the disastrous cuts these mean-spirited Republicans are trying to push through the Hill.
This is completely outrageous. Remember, this is money that was already decided on by a Republican House, a Democratic Senate. It was a bipartisan agreement. And if they can just start to go in there and take away these incredibly important funds, the sky's the limit. So that's my first point to our Republican colleagues. What are you doing? I guess you'll just rubber stamp anything Donald Trump wants. But the second one is, look at what this is for. Just as we've seen these weather disasters, including horrifically in Texas, but the fires in Arizona and the like, in many remote areas, or if in states like Florida with hurricane season upon us, they rely on a series of public broadcasting to get alerts out. And when it works well, when you actually have a system set up, it works well. This is not the time to cut back on public radio and public TV. And one thing people don't know, 2 to 1 on the percentage that comes from federal funding, 2 to 1, it's double for rural, the percentage, over what it is for urban and other stations. So that's the case we're going to be making, in addition to the obvious on the foreign aid, when it's really about our security, when we're in the middle of all these peace negotiations in the Mideast. Why would you mess around with funding that people have relied on and trust America to provide?
The sky is falling. The sky is falling. It's happening. Doom predictors. The reason they are screaming is that Trump is in the process of effectively dismantling the Democrats' empire. It's the same story as with immigration enforcement. The Democrats were everything that they had going for them. When we Republicans were sitting over here going, gosh, their whole platform is dumb. Who would buy this? Who would go for this? Who's supporting it? How are they winning elections? How are they taking over entire states? How are they winning over Congress? And then, by the way, no thanks to the freedom warriors in Congress, but thanks to Elon Musk and Donald Trump, in the first several months of the Trump administration, we discovered that there was this enormous piggy bank that was being used to fund various Democrat projects, USAID among them. These cuts that are being initiated against these foreign programs, all USAID money. It further goes and drives a stake through the heart of this Democratic beast. And here's, Klobuchar and all the Democrats and the media that support them are saying, we're going to become less safe in the world because we're not giving money to these pet projects, everywhere. But what they're not admitting is that every grant that was given, every $20 million that went out the door to a foreign country, a certain percentage of that, not insignificant, came back to politicians. I think Republicans are implicated in it too, by the way. I think that explains why Republicans over the years, the Rand Pauls of the world and whatnot. Well, I'm not saying Rand Paul's taken tens of millions of dollars, no. But there are colleagues of his that have. And when you see that Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell, who, yes, don't love Trump, but this is particularly damaging to them because they've been Republicans consistently on the pork train take. And it's ending. Where do you think the DNC got all this funding? Isn't it funny? Isn't it interesting that the DNC is in the toilet financially? And it's not just that Kamala Harris came along and blew a bunch of money. That was her campaign money. The Democratic National Committee is out of cash because suddenly Trump's Department of Justice has a laser focus on Act Blue, which is a giant money laundering operation allowing individuals to contribute far beyond the constitutional or the legal limit. We have the spigot turned off at all of these different agencies. We have payments for the first time being scrutinized. The era of funny money in Washington is over. And the swamp is freaking out. A lot of Democrats and some Republicans are sensing that business as usual is over. And by the way, not to return to the Epstein situation, but you can understand the powerful incentives there are right now to derail Trump, to make Trump less effective, to tie him up in a controversy that delegitimizes his presidency and creates a predicate for perhaps initiating a removal proceeding. All of this designed to stall the president's agenda, to stall Congress, and to tie up the president and congressional Republicans through the midterms, at which point, of course, the Democrats plan to stage a coup. It's all obvious. It's all right there. And, the reason they're coming for Trump is because he's right over the target. So again, when Trump is lashing out, saying, I can't believe you guys are so stupid, you're falling for this hoax. Okay, we're not falling for the hoax. At least I'm not. We think it hasn't been handled properly by the administration, and we're allowed to make that criticism. But we also can appreciate that the reason that this hoax is being perpetrated on Trump is because he is effective. And the Democrats in Congress are simply freaking out, and they are going to do crazy things, which is why they're pulling out the latest insurance policy. All the dots connect. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be right back after these messages.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering California. Now, when we talk about the DOGE spending cuts, the rescission bill that is making its way through Congress at the Senate presently, we look at this bill. What is it at the end of the day? This cuts the deficit in real time. Remember, last hour talking about Powell and the Federal Reserve. Powell continues, who's the chairman of the Federal Reserve, in charge of determining when to cut interest rates. Our interest rates right now are and remain still very high, which of course presents a problem for refinancing, loans, businesses borrowing, etc. It's giant, speed brakes on the economy. And Powell continues to say, we can't do it. We can't do it. We got inflation. Now, the inflationary numbers come in and they are good. I played that clip from CNBC. The inflation is good today. The numbers keep coming out. It's all good news. But the Fed says, no. The explanation is, just as we have every Democrat in the Senate and even some Republicans obstruct efforts to reduce spending because A, it cuts into their benefits, their pork, and B, it's a win for the president, which cannot be permitted. The Federal Reserve, which ought to be independent, and when Trump says, hey, maybe we got to replace this guy, everybody screams, you can't do that. It's an independent agency. But they're not acting independently. They're acting politically. They don't want to see Trump be a runaway success. They want to see Trump fail. They don't want this. So I'm just pointing this out. And by the way, there's a guy that could replace Powell. His name is Kevin Warsh. He sat down with Maria Bartiromo, and this was on Fox. Bartiromo asks him, shouldn't it be part of the Fed's thinking? Saying, okay, we're spending more money. We're just spending all this money on interest to hold the debt. Shouldn't they be looking at ways to cut that cost in order to balance the budget better? And here's Warsh's answer. By the way, this guy could very well be Trump's pick to replace Powell when his term expires, or perhaps even sooner.
So the president's right to be frustrated with the J. Powell and the Federal Reserve. Inflation comes when the government spends too much. That's the spending you're talking about, and prints too much. And the government's done just that thing over the last 4 or 5 years. The government needs to put its fiscal house in order and its monetary house in order. The president took a good shot at putting the fiscal house in order through this tax bill. We're going to grow a lot more than the Congressional Budget Office says. The U.S. is on the cusp of, I think, a radical improvement in our productive capacity. The tax bill is part of it. Deregulatory policy is part of it. Spending reductions are part of it. And the Fed needs to get on board.
Plain and simple. And what helps all of this is simply spending less. I don't care that it was previously appropriated, right? The rescission bill is not a new budget. It's clawing back money that was already appropriated before we spend it. This is something like saying with your wife, okay, we're going to go buy a car. Okay, honey, we'll buy a car. All right. And then slowly you get closer and closer to the car purchase. I don't really have the money right now. I don't have the money. And then comes the time to buy the car. And you go, you know what? We're not going to buy the car. Even though we have the money, we could borrow the money to buy the car. It's not the right time to buy the car. And we as a country need to do more of this. It's essential. And at the same time, we need to drop the cost of borrowing gradually, not just to get in line with the norms of the developed world that are currently in place, but also to help stimulate the economy at a critical time, right? We've gotten the tax cuts, made the tax cuts permanent. That's been, ratified through the big, beautiful bill. Now we also need to juice the economy a bit and give it a head start to let things grow and develop so we can encourage businesses. For example, when businesses are able to borrow money either through loans, long-term loans, and lines of credit, when they're able to borrow, they're able to hire more. They're able to invest more. And it starts to kickstart this economy that in the last 4 years has been desperately lagging. So this guy Warsh, I love that he's saying this. Bartiromo then goes on to ask him about the hysteria over tariffs. Okay. And again, everybody's forgetting the side of the tariff conversation that is the revenue.
President Trump is doing his part. A lot of hysteria over his tariffs, and yet look what just happened. The tariffs actually brought in $27 billion for the month, customs duties. You're talking about $100 billion on an annualized basis for tariffs, and we have a budget surplus for the month of June. Should the Federal Reserve be cutting interest rates right now?
So in a word, yes. Maria, it's quite simple. Why is it that money and financial conditions are so loose on Wall Street and considerably tighter on Main Street? Because the Fed has the policy mix exactly wrong. It has a big balance sheet like we're in the 2008 crisis or the 2020 pandemic, and has rates that are too high. It needs to shrink the Fed balance sheet and cut interest rates. In so doing, Main Street can get a much lower cost of credit. First-time home buyers can find their way into houses, and the policy mix would be right. I don't know if I'm just saying that because I grew up 200 miles from here in a sort of place far from the bright lights in big city. But Main Street needs to get its break, and it's high time they do it, and the Fed can be part of that.
Now, Trump gets asked this morning about Jerome Powell and his reluctance to lower rates, and this is what his answer is.
As far as Jerome Powell, do you have plans, or if you're back considering firing Jerome Powell, what's your justification if you're thinking about this to do this?
Too late. He's always been too late, hence his nickname, Too Late. He should have cut interest rates a long time ago. Europe has cut them 10 times in a short period of time, and we cut them none. The only time we cut them was just before the election to try and help Kamala or Biden, whoever the hell it was, because nobody really knew. Obviously, that didn't work, but he tried to cut them for the Democrats, Kamala. And how did that work out? You'll tell me. It didn't work out too well, did it? But he's I think he does a terrible job. He's costing us a lot of money, and we fight through it. It's almost, the country's become so successful that it doesn't have a big impact, but it does hurt people wanting to get a mortgage. People want to buy a house. He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I was surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him, but they did. So, no, we're not planning on doing it. They were very concerned. He's doing a little renovation for $2.5 billion of the Fed, building a renovation, and they have a close to $900 million cost overrun. And it's a shame, but the biggest cost overrun is the cost overrun for interest rates, because we should be paying 3 points lower, and we would save $1 trillion a year in interest if that were the case, and all it is the stroke of a pen. And that goes for his board, too, because his board is not doing the job, because they should try and rein this guy in. So he's doing a lousy job, but no, I'm not talking about that. Fortunately, we get to make a change in the next, 8 months or so.
So he's not saying he's going to fire him, but he certainly is not happy about it. This is something I think we need to follow very closely. All right. Bottom of the hour here, moving fast through today's program. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Sam Mirejovsky behind the What's Right microphone. Welcome to the What's Right show, powered by Sam & Ash Injury Law. Speaking of powered, Robbie, I saw this article here, a patent filed by Huawei, Chinese company, for a 3,000-kilometer EV battery. What's the quick math on that? 3,000 kilometers. It's a lot. It charges in 5 minutes. So this, if it's accurate, is not just a small, nudge forward. It's an enormous leap ahead. So we'll see if this comes to be a reality. Now, there's also a little controversy brewing. NBC News, I think, stepped in this pretty nicely. They're making a big deal that James Comer, the chairman of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, used an e-signature for a subpoena noticing the Biden administration over its use of the auto pen. And they're like, aha, Comer's not even signing his own documents. Did you see this, Robbie? Well, this is just, they're clowning. Do they not realize that digital signatures, per federal law in the E-Sign Act, are legally binding electronic records? They verify the signer's identity and intent, and they are, under the law, equivalent to wet signatures. That's it. Congress voted on it. It is federal law, full stop. What is an auto pen? An auto pen just mechanically signs, replicates a signature. And for any of these pardons or executive orders to be valid, the auto pen, the operator of the auto pen, okay, I don't think the pen has a mind of its own, but the operator of the auto pen must have the president's direct authorization. So these are just some of the idiotic takes that we have to contend with here. Now, been some developments also on Adam Schiff's case. Schiff's obviously, Adam Schiff, now a senator, formerly a congressman from California, well, he's in hot water over this alleged mortgage fraud. The latest development is that his personal checks, which are matter of record here, used to pay the mortgage, list his address as the home in Maryland, as the house that he claimed to be his primary residence. His primary residence, of course, can't be in Maryland. Yes, he may spend more time in D.C. than he does back home in his district, but in order to be a congressman and now a senator from California, he has to live where? Trick question. He has to live in California. He has to live, and when he was in Congress, he has to specifically live in that district. By the way, here in Nevada, I don't know if you realize this, it is a big felony if you don't live where you say you live. If you are an assemblyman and claim to live, and you represent a district, let's say you'd represent a district in, Spring Valley area of Las Vegas, and you move, in the middle of your term to somewhere downtown. That's a felony. You're going to jail. Okay, that's not a fine. It's a big deal, and it gets prosecuted here all the time. This is why the Letitia James situation, which I don't know how that case is progressing, Robbie. Do we have any updates? Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, also was playing fast and loose with what her primary residence was. And of course, in order to be the AG of New York, you have to live in the state of New York. So Schiff has this problem, but the checks are an interesting note that he basically, has a tiny little townhome, according to property records, a 900 square foot condo in Burbank that is his, address in California. And then he has this quite nice large home in Maryland. And I've always talked about the DC people, and it gets captured beautifully in House of Cards, in the first season of House of Cards. Not the original the remake, the Kevin Spacey remake of House of Cards, Netflix House of Cards. Well, remember how Kevin Spacey, who is, by the way, in the show, a Democrat congressman, powerful congressman, he's the House whip. And he is, living in this beautiful, elaborate townhome, this almost mansion in D.C. And then him and his wife, Claire, go and visit the congressional district where he is, from, that he represents. And it's this house that's disheveled. The lawn isn't even as dry. It looks like a very basic, just a very basic house. And the implications, they never say this in the show, but it's exactly captures how DC exists for a lot of these congressmen and senators. Their life is in Washington. They only travel back, here to, their districts, to pretend that they care about us. And the other implication, and I've said this before, when we look at all these rescission cuts that you have even Republicans fighting the president on, you realize in the show, in House of Cards, you have this, guy that's working in Congress, probably making $150 a year at that time, living in this opulent house. He's been in politics his entire life, but his wife works for a nonprofit that deals with clean water. And who funds the nonprofit with the clean water? It's Congress. It's the government. So her husband, played by Kevin Spacey, the congressman, goes to Congress, gets money for his wife's little charity that she works for, her little NGO, probably through another entity like USAID, and they live like kings. And they travel back to their district once in a while. The Adam Schiff story here, just wait for it, the way it will develop is it will completely lay bare the fraud that is DC. It's just one more, well, it's not an allegory because it's real, but it's just another example of how this disgusting world operates. And so and so it's not surprising that Adam Schiff said, oh, yeah, it's my primary residence in DC, because he thinks of it that way. His life exists there. And one of the most important things we can do to reform the government, I think, is decentralizing it. If you go to DC, if you travel there, I always found DC to be depressing. I mean, because everybody there lives off the government in some way, shape, or form. Every law firm exists to service government needs. Every person in marketing does something with the guy. Everything has and revolves in some way, shape, or form around the government. There's not innovation there. It's not anything. And the property values that keep going up in DC are reflective of the pork spending that is constantly cycled through that DC economy. And we suckers that aren't in politics, that vote for these people day in and, election after election, and they go to DC and get fat off of us, and we're supposed to be fine with it. It's just an observation. Well, okay, I'll get to this. I know, well, and I'm going to get to immigration next, Robbie. I got to cover what happened on Abby Phillips on CNN. That was wild. Anna Navarro. All right, quick break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian behind the What's Right microphone. So speaking of these NGOs that cycle money through, launder tax dollars in a manner that ultimately benefits Democrat causes, we learned yesterday in D.C. that Chirla, this is the group, this is the charity, the NGO that helps support immigrants, relocating immigrants, has been one of the primary movers and shakers in basically under Biden facilitating human trafficking across the country of illegal aliens. Also, the group that it has been discovered funded the LA riots. Now, Border Patrol vehicles that are being attacked with tire spikes by criminal agitators, they were apparently carried in bags with the Chirla logo. Chirla, by the way, got, $34 million in public funding and then went on to instigate the LA riots. Defund all of this is my point. Get rid of it, all of it, as quickly as possible. Now, immigration, again, Trump is proceeding with great force out there. ICE is deployed, funded. It's an unstoppable process. And I keep saying the Democrats are losing their minds over this. It was on full display when yesterday, Anna Navarro basically started hyperventilating about ICE. And Anna Navarro was once a Republican, has left the party, is now a full-fledged, foaming at the mouth, TDS-afflicted Democrat. Bruce Palumbo was on, and she told him, I'm not interested in your opinion because you're white. Things got a little crazy, let me tell you.
Also, I want to respond to you saying that I was hyperbolic when I talked about a reign of terror.
Because that is hyperbolic.
No, it might be hyperbolic for you. as a white man.
Oh, okay.
It's certainly
So
not hyperbolic for me
being
as a
racist.
Latino. No, I'm not being racist.
It's incredible to dismiss my opinion for being a white
No,
man.
I'm not
is
dismissing
racist.
your opinion. I am
Yes,
telling
you
you
are.
that what the Latino community, the
A lot
brown
of them
community
disagree with you.
in
You do not
America.
speak in one voice
Okay,
for
well,
them.
let me speak with my voice. I mean, you said I was being hyperbolic. Let me
insulted me
respond.
racially, sure.
I'm not. You being a white man as an insult?
When you invoke it to dismiss my
Being a
opinion,
white man
yes.
as an insult?
When you invoke it,
Are you?
as
Do you
an
think?
argument.
Do you think Latinos are living under circumstances
I'm
that
gonna
other
hit
people may
pause
not
on
be
this
right now
conversation
in
because
this country?
We're about to have a whole conversation about that very thing. But I just want to make a point that, Brad, all she's saying is that her view of the situation is different from yours. I don't think that's an insult.
She basically said I'm wrong because I'm a white man.
She just said I see it.
No, I said I see it differently.
She
because
said
I'm an
I
immigrant
see it
Latino.
differently from you, which is not an insult. It's not, and it's also not a racial insult.
It's also not an explanation why I'm wrong.
But we have a lot more to discuss on this very topic.
My God, Abby Phillips is so condescending. And does she even hear herself? You know, Palumbo here says that, Anna Navarro is being hyperbolic. That she is exaggerating this, calling this, reign of terror, which, by the way, suggests something akin to, let's say, the French Revolution, or, Stalinism, Lavrenti Beria running around bagging people in the middle of the night. And he says it's hyperbolic. You can't say it's hyperbolic. I as a Latino woman, and this kind of nonsense is so tired and done. We are so over this. You can't have an opinion, Sam, because you're straight and white and rich. My opinions are just as good as yours. This is why I started telling people when they come at me with this stuff. My opinion's just as good as yours. Maybe it's better. Maybe the fact that I've been successful in life and you hate me because I'm well-to-do is actually a reason why you ought to listen to me more. I've done something in life. I've created something. I've built a few things. I've raised a family. I'm the paterfamilias, dang nabbit. What movie is that from? Yeah. Oh, brother, where art thou? I'm the paterfamilias. Yeah, it's nuts, but CNN is invested. Boy, they are invested in the anti-immigration narrative. They did a whole segment about a family self-deporting. It's supposed to tug at our heartstrings. Okay, I'm going to play it. Let me do this. I'm going to play it.
So you are saying bye to the U.S. for good?
For good, yeah. Yeah, for good.
Fearful of President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown, Sasha, her husband Julio, and their 3 kids are leaving behind the life they built together.
What are you the most excited for in Mexico?
The pool.
The pool?
And the beach.
The beach?
Julio is an undocumented immigrant from Mexico. Sasha and their 3 children are all U.S. citizens. They decided to make the move together only moments after Trump took office.
There was an executive order being signed, and that was her call first. Said, what do you think about moving to Mexico? And I said, honestly, at this point, yeah, let's do it.
We're gonna move to Mexico.
We're gonna move to Mexico, not today.
And with that, the family began to wind down their lives, sifting through keepsakes and moving out of their home.
Say bye to the house.
Bye. Miss you.
Okay, Robbie, I got a consulting producer, Robbie, here. He has some wisdom. I understand that when it comes to the drive-by media, when it comes to CNN, the viewers are not, a lot of the times, super well informed. Okay, I'm not trying to disparage anybody. I'm just saying not super well informed. Now, haven't these people at least seen 90 Day Fiancé? By the way, if you want good trashy TV, 90 Day Fiancé is great. The premise of 90 Day Fiancé is some poor sap guy or gal in the U.S. falls in love, whatever, remotely with somebody in a foreign country. They're not a U.S. citizen. And they get that special visa that gets them in the country, and they got to get married within 90 days. I don't understand, right? Do people not get, aren't people asking the question, wait a minute, you're married? The wife is a U.S. citizen. Julio is not. Why didn't they take care of the paperwork? What could be preventing them? And maybe the answer is that Julio has a rap sheet. Maybe the answer is that there's something there legally preventing Julio from becoming a citizen. Or, alternatively, maybe Julio is a procrastinating, dumb money. But nobody's asking these questions. It's just so funny to me. The piece continues.
What made Trump a second term more nerve-wracking for you, that to come to a decision that you had to leave the country?
There are no limits. There are no limits on being a target. The only main concern is like he looks brown, he looks different, he don't speak English. He's the one. It doesn't matter.
That's where things stand tonight in the case of Gilmar Abrego Garcia.
They were confronted with their worst nightmare when Gilmar Abrego Garcia was mistakenly deported to a notorious mega prison in El Salvador.
I can see myself in that, and I don't want us to wait until we're in the same situation.
Folks, if you think that Gilmar Abrego Garcia or Gilmar Abrego Garcia was deported because he's a slight shade of brown, that Trump and the ICE agents are walking around with Vista paint color wheels, kind of going, oh, well, Sam, you look like you've got a little bit of sun today. Off to CCOT you go. Then I don't know what to tell you. Watch 90 Day Fiancé, okay? You'll learn how this works. If you get married to somebody who's not a U.S. citizen, they can get, their residency. It's doable. But this stuff from CNN is just so great. And by the way, it's all this stuff, it's being put out there because they are terrified of how successful Trump is being. Terrified of it. And that goes from everything to the fake Epstein file that I'm convinced is floating out there. All right, we'll see who's right about that. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show's brought to you, as always, by Sam & Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust for your injury case, because you deserve